Good morning. It's Mary Jo. Today is Thursday, March 10th, and coming to you with another series in my power tools that you need in your leadership toolbox. Today's session is going to be probably a little bit shorter than some of the others have been because it's not as deep of a topic, but it's one that I find very important. And as I've grown my own facilitation skills, I've found that I use them all the time. So we're going to talk about how you facilitate as a leader and what it means to facilitate and some tips to become a good facilitator. Um, I'm going to give it a minute or two to see if anyone does join in live. And even if they don't, we'll catch you on the replay. Um, I'm also excited. I've talked before about how much I really enjoy baking, and we're just a few days away from Pie Day, from March 14th, and I am already evil planning what kind of pies I make to celebrate. It brings together my nerdiness and my baking all in one place. It's excellent. Makes me happy. Um, so I will have to fill you in on what kind of awesome stuff I make. I do owe somebody a pie for their birthday still. So I may have to make a lovely pecan pie for her and find some delicious pies to feed my family and most of myself. I don't know. Um, so yeah, one of the fun things I'm looking forward to this weekend. And I also have to make a Charlotte Royale for my um, pastry homework, which if anyone's ever seen the Great British Bake Off, they've done this a couple of times where it's like jelly roll, like sliced up, and then lines a bowl, and you fill it with Bavarian cream, and there's whipped cream, and it's amazing looking. So I'm super excited to do something fun like that, and I will probably be posting pictures on Facebook of that. So this is how I spend my weekends. um, all right, let's dive in. Let's talk a little bit about facilitation and how this benefits you as a leader and why it's really a powerful tool for you to have. So, as a quick reminder, the reason we're doing this Power Tool series is that just like a craftsman, we all have a toolbox that we rely on as leaders. And you have this wide variety of tools that you can draw from, but there are some that are very powerful that will get you results faster, better results, um, that will drive really great outcomes for you as a leader, for your team, for yourself, and for your organization. So that's why we're focusing on facilitation skills, because it's something I think a lot of people don't spend a lot of time on and don't necessarily develop as facilitators if they're leaders, but it's something that can really just get you so much of a difference in how your team performs and how you can perform as a leader, that it's something I think everyone should be able to do. So it's important, I think, for two sets of people in for you as a leader. And first is it's very important for your team that you can be a good facilitator. And we'll talk about why facilitation is really important, but your team really benefits a lot in their own personal growth, in how they feel empowered within the team, and how they see themselves really involved in developing solutions and developing their workload. They're not just being assigned a task, they're helping form and frame what that is. And then they're very motivated. And then on the flip side, this is also very important for you as a leader to be a good facilitator, because while you're developing your team, while they're responding, you also are getting the benefit of that empowerment. As your team feels more empowered and grows, they're taking on more. They're releasing some of the day-to-day work from you so that you can be more focused on vision and other things that leaders need to focus on. So there's this interplay between your team's growth and your ability to continue to grow and shine as a leader while that's happening. Um, and good facilitation skills as a leader allow you to be more inspirational, because you're teaching in that moment, you're improving your team, you're doing the things that they need of you, that not only motivates them, but makes them want to follow you and be inspired to activate because of you. So I think facilitation is really key, and not something that people talk nearly as much about in leadership. I was really lucky that when I left corporate world, I suppose, when I started my business, one of the things I wanted to do was more facilitation and strategic planning and things like that. And I reached out to a friend who I thought was an amazing facilitator, and he told me to pursue classes through ICA, the Institute of Cultural. Oh shoot! Now I forgot what they're called, but they have a program called TOP, Technology of Participation. It's a very scientifically researched and driven methodology for facilitation. That he said, for all of the training, all of the work he's done in facilitation, they by far had the best methods and approaches. So I did that. I jumped in, and they're actually local here in Chicago. They have classes across the whole US. And it's been one of the best things I invested in for myself in growing as a facilitator. And I've seen how I've been able to use it in so many different ways, in so many different avenues, in just being part of a team, in leading a team. And I think because we think of facilitators as being a very specific role, we don't always equate it to leadership. And I think if more leaders were facilitators also, you'd see a lot more dynamic and inspirational leaders. So what do you get out of this? What are the results by growing your facilitation skills and being a better facilitator? The first is you get way better solutions than if it was just all coming out of your head. Have you ever had a really great idea that you were so proud of and you told somebody about, and they're like, oh yeah, but you know what? If you did this too, you could really, really grow it. And you two start going back and forth and bantering around an idea until it's grown into something amazing. When we think of solutions ourselves, we're very much confined to our perspective. When we engage other people in developing those solutions, then you get this wider variety of perspectives and new ideas that maybe never would have come to you, but one person talking inspires another person to come up with an idea, which inspires another, and now you've really created something and structured something better than any one person could have done. When I worked at FEMA, we sat on one floor. We were kind of split, our group was split between two floors, and those of us on the 6th floor were in a 8-pack of cubes. And I loved the idea that there would be times where one of us would kind of hit a wall, or we were working on something policy related, and we'd be like, hey, anyone have a minute to talk? And we'd roll our chairs over and we'd sit around in a circle and just kind of like toss ideas around, or like experiences, or what I was in the region, this is what we saw. Oh, well, when I was working at this contractor, this is what I experienced. And we always then could write a white paper that was bounced around, lots of ideas that kind of came together and formed into one. And I found it so fun to be able to do that. And I had brilliant minds around me, which was great. So I think that kind of collaboration is what facilitators do. They structure a way of that group talk and brainstorming and idea generation to help create an atmosphere that allows you to get all those ideas out and then put them together. So you always get better solutions when you do this as a team. You also get increased productivity from your team, because since they're part of developing the solution, developing the strategy, achieving the vision, they have much greater buy-in, and they're automatically aligned to it because they helped create it. They see themselves and their work and their role in creating that product or structure or vision or strategy, whatever it may be. In the book Work of Leaders, it's really very much a 3-piece approach to leadership. It's setting the vision, getting alignment, and then execution of the vision. And the alignment piece comes very naturally when you facilitate the vision piece, and there's this automatic alignment within your team. and then they can help champion that when you need alignment outside of your team, because they were, again, a part of it. They can talk to it from a place of expertise. So you'll very much see increased productivity because there is that increased motivation. There is that buy-in, and people are really excited about what they've helped create. The next outcome that I think is really important is how meetings go. Nobody likes corporate meetings and office meetings, and we all have 1,000 meetings, and the grind of it, especially now in the virtual environment, you go from one to another, and it can be really draining. Well-facilitated meetings, whether it's your routine hour-long meeting or a special big 4-hour meeting that you're doing, well-facilitated meetings are more enjoyable, they are more productive, and you get an outcome at the end rather than just a lot of talking and staring at the table or staring at Zoom and wondering if this is ever going to be over. So if you can provide that structure, if you can walk people through a facilitated conversation, you avoid all the eyes glazing over, people zoning out, and you actually come out the other side of the meeting with actions, with outcomes, rather than just, hey, we just talked about the same thing again, let's move on. So I think meetings change dramatically when you're skilled as a facilitator. And then lastly, managing conflict. If you are a good facilitator, you can help navigate conflict in the moment in a meeting, in the office, or when you're having, maybe you have a employee who is really struggling, facilitating a conversation with them, asking them powerful questions can be way more productive than the carrot and stick approach with your team. So I think you could become a very skilled conflict resolution leader when you're good at facilitating. So what does it mean to facilitate? I actually found some really good information. As you know, if you kind of search in Google around facilitation, it's interesting. There's definitely common themes, things that people always come back to, and they're very similar actually to approaches that we use also in coaching. I think facilitation and coaching are very related, and what it comes down to a lot is asking really good questions in a structured way to listen and try and elicit powerful reactions and powerful conversations. You really want to try and encourage people to think more openly and creatively, to hear each other and take what each other says and build upon it. And I think when you have a good facilitator and a good leader who is a facilitator, you really can witness this creative thinking and dynamic interplay in a team, and it can be very powerful for what you get out of it. I think one of the things that I've learned to do, some through my technology participation training and some through kind of trial and error and in working with teams and different in different ways and different capacities, is you always need to plan. And just as it's drilled into you that you shouldn't go into a meeting without an agenda, you shouldn't just write down an agenda. You should plan a conversation when you want something to be facilitated. Now, not every meeting is going to be this, dynamic facilitated structure, but what you will see is that if you're developing, say for a meeting, there's this topic that we keep talking about and we can't get off of. I'm going to facilitate a 20-minute conversation about that. All right. Or we need to develop our strategy for the next year, our plan for this. We're going to spend 2 hours in this meeting, and I'm going to structure a 2-hour conversation for this. So you need to know kind of very planfully how much time you have and what you want to get out of it. And then you literally design the whole thing. And you really want to focus on what results you want to get in the tangible results, what outcomes you want. What do you want, like really the primary question to be? You want to say, at the end of this conversation, I want us to say we are going to take these 3 actions, or we're going to have a path forward for the next year, or whatever that is. But you also want to have a result that is intangible, that's more about the feeling of the conversation. Do you want people to be really bold? Are you looking for really big, strong, innovative ideas? Are you looking for, you're in conflict resolution mode and you're trying to keep everything open and calm and allow everyone time to talk? You need to also, when you're planning these, what's the outcome that's tangible, and then what feeling do you want to elicit from the partners, and make sure that you are structuring the meeting to elicit that feeling. You want to ask questions and design your questions so that they're not passive. I have a hard time with this in coaching. In a program I just went through, it's funny that I thought I was asking open-ended questions, and I'm not. There's very often that I could say, what do you feel about this? And instead I'll say, is this what you feel about it? And one of those, the answer is yes or no. And the other is a lot of discussion can come out of. So make sure you're asking open-ended questions. What is this? Why is this? How does this work? Rather than, is this what it is? Or, because you're not only closing conversation when you're asking those closed questions, you're also inserting your opinion. And what's really powerful about facilitation is being really objective and letting your team lead and do the work. And that's how you empower them. And that's how you get the results that we're talking about out of facilitation. So be careful not to lead with and insert your own ideas by asking closed questions. And at the same time, you're not shutting down conversation by having simpler yes or no responses. As you're designing the conversation, you want to design it so that it's really an arc. I keep doing this because it's an arc. You want to say, how do set some background, have some context, get people in the right mindset, right? So you ask a little bit about what do you think about this topic, or what is this? What do you think it is? And then you start getting more into the how of so how could we do this differently? How could we do this better? How does this make you feel? And you want to kind of start with a lot of making sure everyone is getting into the same mindset, and then start asking more and more powerful questions that lead towards a desired end. And the last thing I'll say about what to do and what to do in facilitating is always come to a conclusion. If for some reason the conversation goes way longer than you thought it would, one thing I would offer is that you probably need to work on your facilitation skills, because you're going to need to be able to say, that's off topic, or that's not where we are, or we need to keep moving forward. And it's a little uncomfortable to push people through something that they're in the middle of talking about. But as a good facilitator, that's what you have to do. The other thing I would say is if you're running long because you're just having brilliant conversation, is that you say, okay, we're stopping here and we've captured everything, and this is where we're going to pick up next time, and we're going to schedule this much time, and at the end of that time we have to finish and we have to come to resolution. But the conclusion of the conversation, you should summarize everything that's happened and everything you heard, and then set what the final result will be of, okay, here's what we came up with today, here's what we've looked at, here are the top things that we talked about that we're going to use to move forward, and then this is where you set the final expectation. This is going to be in a week when we come back to this meeting. I'm going to give you this write-up, and it's going to explain everything we're going to do, and that will be the final product out of it. If you bring in a facilitator to do strategic planning for you, there's the big planning session, right? But they also deliver a final product to you. You should be doing that with your team as well. Even if you're not the one who does it, if you have somebody who you can assign it to and say, okay, you summarize everything, and Bob, I'm going to ask you, would you be willing to kind of put this together in a white paper, and we can talk about it next time. So make sure that you have a full conclusion. You don't want to fall into the trap of having a facilitated conversation that everyone feels really good out of, and really feels like we talked about a lot of great things, and then they never go anywhere. That's a big trap that starts to erode morale rather than build it, because now they felt like they were heard in the moment, but nothing happened. There was no result, there was no outcome, and they can't actually execute on that. So make sure you always have summarization, conclusion, and outcome, a product at the end of it. So a few tips that I think are important for anyone who maybe does some facilitation, tries to use this approach in their leadership already, and maybe hasn't gone through extensive training on it, or maybe this is something you want to try out and you don't currently really facilitate a lot of your discussions with your team, but you want to give it a shot. So my best advice and how I would suggest people go about this is, number one is listen. You want to listen carefully to what every member says. It can be very easy to think about in the moment. You're trying to listen and you're trying to think about what's the next question, or where am I going to take this, or what do I want to do. You've got to let that settle out and really be in the moment and listen to everyone who's participating. Continue to ask the what questions and the why questions to drill into topics. While you'll design a set of questions, you're not, you're going to keep it somewhat high level and allow yourself time and space to kind of drill into things that come up. Along with listening, the other thing that I think is really important is you need to watch as you facilitate. This gets harder on Zoom, so everyone has to have their camera on if you're doing a facilitated session for Zoom, because you need to see the nonverbals in the room. You need to listen carefully and powerfully to what everyone is saying, but you need to watch who's engaged, who's not, whose eyes just lit up because they had an idea also, and you want to make sure you wrap in that idea in that conversation. Who is pulling back? Who's not engaged or started out engaged and has shrunk because something happened along the way where they felt like they were not heard or they were shot down, and it's going to be more of a conversation that they walk away feeling bad about rather than really engaged on. So watch what's going on around you, and don't be hesitant to pull in people who are either not participating, or you see that nonverbal that they have something that they want to contribute or that they've pulled back. So listen, watch, and engage, I think, are three big things that I would focus on. And the engage part is that pulling in your team members and eliciting responses from everybody and making sure everyone has their chance to speak. Not everybody loves being facilitated. Not everybody loves contributing in this way. Everybody, though, generally wants to feel heard. So they may not love being put on the spot in front of the rest of the team and contributing. So start to recognize who are the consistent contributors. You probably have a good idea of that already. The people who want to, just talk your ear off, right? And then there's people who have good ideas but are very hesitant to share them in bigger places. And you can prep them ahead of time. Just be like, hey, I think you've got great things to say. If you can just work in, a couple, even if this is uncomfortable, I would love this to be like something you grow with, and frame it for them that way. It might help draw them in. And you can also even hype them a little bit in the moment. You're like, hey, Mark, it looks like you have something you want to contribute. You always have great ideas. Come on, share it with us, please. And see if you can try and draw it out that way. You never want to force anyone, but trying to draw people into the conversation is very effective and very important in facilitation. So those are the three key things I think you need to do: listen, watch, engage. A couple other pieces of advice that I would offer is you want to always set the stage at the beginning. So don't just walk in and be like, all right, we're going to solve this problem and I'm going to ask you some questions and here we go. Spend a little time saying that you want to have this, we've had this, give the context is what I'm going to try and say. We've had this conversation several times. I think it's time that we look at this in a little bit different way. So I'd like to walk everyone through a conversation that I'm going to allow you all to do the talking. I'm going to ask questions and we'll see where we go. I need your help and your support in, just simply keeping everything tight, keeping everything succinct, and I think we can come to a really good outcome. So everyone on board with that? Great. You don't want to just walk in and start firing off questions. Set the stage, give the appropriate context, and make sure that everyone understands where you're going. Then the other piece of advice I would offer is is follow the conversation. I mentioned this a little bit already, but as you design what you want the conversation to be and the questions in the story arc of the conversation, you're going to have to also be flexible in that. You really want to still get to those points on the arc, but there's going to be places where you have deviations or things. And if it's totally off topic, you park it. If it's on topic and it's really leading somewhere, dive in. It's worth the extra 5-10 minutes to dive in and keep asking more questions and following a really interesting point and allowing everyone to explore it together. So be flexible in that. So it's very much one of my favorite quotes about planning comes from Eisenhower. A plan, I'm probably not getting it exactly right off the top of my head. A plan is useless. Planning is everything. You don't have to follow the plan perfectly. It's the planning process of designing the conversation and knowing kind of what those points on the arc are that are very important, and then allow the conversation to flow and follow it where it goes. If you're listening well and watching and engaging, following the conversation becomes very easy and natural. So that's what I have to offer on facilitation. I really hope that some of you watching are looking at ways that you can incorporate this into your own leadership style, because I have found it extremely powerful for myself. And this is one of the things that I will teach in the Inspirational Leader Accelerator also. Engaging your team, facilitating them through anything from a routine meeting to a strategic planning to just like this really intense conflict is so important to being inspirational and motivational to your team. So if you are ready to find out how I can support you in becoming an inspirational leader and get you through that transformation, you can always schedule a call with me. I'll stick this in the comments too. It's easy to do. You can just jump in my calendar at this link and schedule 30 minutes, and we can talk through what you want to get out of it. That's all I have for today. I will be back with more power tools and random thoughts about baking, and maybe even I'll share my pies for Pie Day. Hope everyone has a great day, great weekend. Talk to you later.